Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. My name is Chad Wartsma, and I am the Marketing and Creative Manager for ITM 21st and PBI. As many of you know, back in July of 2017, PBI was acquired by ITM 21st, based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And that's who I'm actually up here in Minnesota, and our friends out in PBI are out in California, and we'll be bringing you today's webinar. With that acquisition, ITM 21st has brought a lot more resources that will better equip them to service all their clients. So on behalf of both ITM 21st and PBI, welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar, Navigating the Compliance Challenges of Missing Participants, is going to be presented by Sue McDonald, who is the President of Pension Benefits Information Company. Sue is a nationally recognized expert on the confidentiality and personally identifiable information. She has testified on Capitol Hill in the past, addressing critically important and necessary balance between the protection and individual privacy and appropriate fiduciary access to confidential information in order to ensure the integrity and viability of pension benefits plans. So before I turn it over to Sue, just got a couple of house cleaning things I wanted to touch on. We do encourage people to pose questions throughout the webinar presentation. We'll save those for to the end, and Sue and either myself or someone else from PBI will do their best to address as many questions as we possibly can. So again, thank you for taking some time out of your busy day to join us for this webinar. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Sue.
Perfect. Thank you, Chad, for the intro. Well, it's a pleasure to have all of you attend this webinar. We are quite impressed with how many people responded and were interested in this topic. So it certainly seems like it's well-timed. And if you're in the industry and been watching what's been taking place, there's a lot of confusion on this whole topic of missing participants nearing retirement age. And that's been the business that PBI has been in for decades. We were the first to introduce a death audit service way back in 1982. As a result of identifying dead people, clients came to us and said, okay, now I need to find a beneficiary. What can you do? So for decades, we've been locating participants. We know how to do it. We have gotten many a client out of a regulatory challenge because of our comprehensive process and the auditable trail that we deliver to our clients. And so we're taking it up a step now, and I want to introduce you to what's been taking place in the area of the DOL and missing participants. So make no mistake, this is a hot topic. And unfortunately, it's not going to go away. The DOL started investigating term vested participants. So how did we get here? Pension plans actually have to file a form with the IRS that identifies the separated deferred vested participants. The IRS shares this data with the SSA and sends a notice once benefits are applied for. The DOL at this point is taking a huge focus on operations and requests for data. So a few complaints really piqued their interest. As the DOL dived deeper into the data, they found numerous red flags. Participants who claimed they had no idea of potential benefits, and the auditors are going, where were they getting their summary annual report, their annual funding notice, they're eligible to commence before 70 and a half so they don't face the excise penalties. It all became very confusing, and so in a nutshell, the DOL wants pension plan sponsors to improve payment practices for terminated vested participants. The DOL believes, and this is new, that there is an ongoing outreach obligation for plan sponsors to reunite participants eligible for benefits. In the past, it was really just viewed as something you did at 70 and a half so that they didn't face the penalties. But this ongoing requirement and this even starting to venture into the at normal retirement age as opposed to required minimum distribution. So the IRS has always been interested in people being in pay status. They want the dollars. There was also some interesting guidance, and while it was an internal memo to auditors, it does mention certified mail as a required element for required mandatory distribution. And this is new, kind of came out of nowhere. And that all goes back to the fact that the guidance is very limited. Most of the documentation that deals with missing participants pertains to terminating plans. And, you know, that's not the case in a lot of these situations. It's really when people get into pay status. So how did this all come about? It started with a regional initiative. The Philadelphia DOL office focused on DB plans with large terminated vested participants. And the DOL can obviously get that data because it's filed, with the 5500. So they performed an analysis to find terminated vested participants that were eligible to commence and were not receiving benefits or had a lump sum payout. So they're saying, well, why aren't these people in pay status? What's interesting is the results that they saw. They recovered more than $165 million over a 10-month period that should have been paid to participants. That was enough to really motivate them and say, what is going on? As a result of the success in the Philadelphia office, this program is now going nationwide. Auditors are requesting a lot of data. The plan documents, the policies and procedures, they're reviewing the entire term vested census file. They're asking for proof. What action was taken in the outcome? What did you, Mr. Plan Sponsor, do to try to find these people? And if they were not successful, they are asking, what other measures did you take? They identified missing and wrong elements in a data file. So that proposed a big problem. How do you know when someone should go into pay status if you don't have a date of birth? You have no idea. And if you don't have an SSN and if you don't have an address, it's hard to say that you're doing what you need to do as a plan sponsor. So what the IRS did, they mailed letters to the addresses provided by the plan sponsor. So they requested all this data. They performed a large mailing, and many of them were on file, were located at the address on file, and claimed they had no idea about benefits outstanding. And that pretty much shocked them. The DOL also researched new addresses and performed mailings, and many were found with a simple Google search. Plan sponsors, when questioned, said these people are missing. So the DOL requested the data. They mailed certified letters to the last known address on file with the plan sponsor, and the response that they got from the participants that they had no idea they were eligible for benefits. DOL followed up on this and said this could be a breach of fiduciary duty under ERISA, and huge red flags. So let's go to plan sponsor responsibilities. And I know you all know about Title I of ERISA, and the fact that you have a duty to act prudently is one of fiduciary's central responsibilities under ERISA. It requires expertise in a variety of areas. So under that, the whole concept of acting solely in the best interest of participants and their beneficiaries with the exclusive purpose of providing benefits to them. That's the only reason that plan exists, and that's how a plan sponsor is supposed to execute. So they have to carry out their duties prudently. They have to follow their plan documents. They need to make sure they're only paying reasonable plan expenses. So then there's this whole duty to act prudently. If you lack experience, hire someone with the required expertise. And we see that a lot on the investment side. But, you know, there are other concerns. Prudence focuses on the process for making fiduciary decisions. So how did you come about with what steps you were going to take? That becomes a very critical element. You have to have documented the decisions and the basis for making them. So if you decide this participant only has a small balance and we're going to go to a certain level and not do more, then, you know, that is part of your decision-making process. And if it's documented and it also is followed in the plan document, then you're in a very good position. You should certainly consider more than cost in selecting a service provider. Fees should be reasonable, but there's a whole quality of the process that needs to be ensured. And you should really do an assessment on more than just cost. You should perform an apples-to-apples comparison. It's important to consider more than price, and unfortunately, being cheap may cost a plan sponsor a lot in the long run. The other interesting fact is the DOL has made these comments that there is a requirement to have a recurring process for reunification. And that is something that we haven't heard before. So just want to make sure that you keep that in mind. I think you all know plan sponsors can't outsource their fiduciary responsibilities. So you can't simply say, well, my TPA does that or my consultant does that. The plan sponsor is the one responsible, and they're responsible for making sure that it's done in monitoring their service providers. The plan document is critical. It serves as the foundation for the plan operations, and plan sponsors really need to make sure they're following them. And if they outsource it, then their service provider is. So what is the DOL looking for? It's basically your terminated vested payment practices. Plans have procedures, and unfortunately they were not following them. And this is really what raised the red flags. You can have a great, nice document that says all the things you're going to do, but if you don't follow it, it's worthless. So what did they find? They found a significant number of term-vested participants that were eligible to commence. They found participants over 70 and a half that are subject to the excise tax. And as a fiduciary, are you acting in the best interest of those participants if they're going to be penalized? That's a tough one. They found lack of policies and procedures in place regarding those that are eligible to commence. And the biggest factor in that, are they doing that on a regular basis? If so, when? There's a lot of questions. So plans have procedures and are simply not following them. There's the issue of not having the appropriate data. So once again, the missing DOBs, addresses, SSNs. The DOL wants to see that you notify terminated vested participants who are about to become eligible for payment at normal retirement age, or be required to start payment certainly before age 70 and a half. The DOL has informally indicated this concept of adopting recurring efforts to notify term vested participants of their right to collect a pension. And that recurring is a kind of a new buzzword into this whole process. So needless to say, confusion abounds. ERISA administration is confusing because it's divided amongst the DOL, the IRS, and the PBGC. Title I, which contains the rules for reporting and disclosure, vesting, participation, funding, fiduciary conduct, and civil enforcement, is administered by the U.S. Department of Labor. Title II of ERISA, which amended the IRS code to parallel many of the Title I rules, it's administered by the IRS. Title III is concerned with jurisdictional matters and the coordination of enforcement and regulatory activities by both the Department of Labor and the IRS. Title IV covers the insurance of defined benefit plans and is administered by the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. That primarily concerns defined benefit plans, but they recently announced guidance on terminating 401k plans. There's 160 some odd pages that you can read to figure out how you can do that. So needless to say, they don't make it easy. So despite this lack of guidance, because there is nothing that says you as a plan sponsor need to do the following steps. It doesn't exist. With all of that, though, the DOL is asserting statements that this is a breach of fiduciary duty. They're taking the position that a retirement plan can't assume a participant address is correct just because it didn't come back as undeliverable. And we agree with that. At PBI, we see this all the time through our confirmed address location process. And we all know if you've lived in your house for 10 years and you get a piece of mail from someone, you know, that long ago, you might just throw it in the garbage, and so you would have no indication did it get to the intended participant. So the American Council of Benefits has come up with it's about a 10-page letter that they sent to the DOL outlining their concerns and requesting a rulemaking process to ensure that there is formal guidance versus an ad hoc, inconsistent enforcement where different DOL agents are saying different things. Plan sponsors are confused. The legal counsel that gets involved is going, wait a second, where's the basis for this requirement? So we do believe, you know, that we are going to get more information, but I think it's pretty clear that this problem is not simply going to go away. Even if you think about the lack of guidance, the fiduciary responsibilities are there, and certainly getting people in pay status and delivering the benefits that they're entitled to is a huge part of that. So, it's crystal clear. Plan sponsors can't do what they've always done. They can't wait for a participant to file a claim for benefits. And in my decades of working in this industry, I've talked to many a plan sponsor that says, no, we don't need to go locate them. They need to file a claim for benefits. And yes, they do need to file a claim. But there are responsibilities, and I think that that's what's clearly coming to light in all of this. So the problem's not going to go away. It's not going to improve with age. It gets worse. Putting policies and procedures in place before an audit letter arrives is prudent. We've been helping clients with even that are just starting a process. We're giving them all the documentation of what steps we're going to take, and that has helped them in these audit situations by being able to show that they are, in fact, doing something. So the other big issue is, do you have the ability to prove that you followed your policies and procedures consistently? And so what does that mean? You know, if you're in an audit and you say, well, so-and-so went on the internet and tried to find them, how are you going to prove that? You can't. If you perform a mailing, how are you going to be able to prove that you, in fact, did perform the mailing? And if you did perform the mailing, what happened? Did it come back as undeliverable? Did they respond? Did nothing happen? Those are all things that the DOL is asking for. And they're strongly recommending that plan sponsors adopt the procedures that are documented and that they can prove their compliance. So that, in essence, the biggest thing is, do you have a policy? Is it documented? And can you prove that you, in fact, followed that policy? So we've been in the trenches with our clients. We serve a lot of the Fortune 200, which is the large defined benefit plans. We've been helping multi-employer plans out that are getting the same kind of questions. And what we're doing for them is going back and getting all the supporting documentation of what efforts we took. And it's been a very time-consuming, tedious matter. And at this point, we're saying we got to make this easier for both internally for PBI by refining the way we go about doing these services, but also in delivering the documentation. So, and we're helping both the plan sponsor and the TPA, and in some cases with approval from the plan sponsors, the DOL's coming directly to us. They're asking us a lot of questions. We're giving them the proof. We're providing our closeout letter. Then they come back and they say, well, how many times did they search for this person? So it's really, it's grown into something much more than it was in the past. So through all of this, we've gained some valuable insights on what the DOL is looking for. The auditor information requests continue for months. And what we've even experienced is somebody was in a DOL audit, and then because of this new nationwide, they're about ready to close it. They come and say, well, share with me the term vested population. And so now it's opening up new areas, and that's been mandated by the supervisors within the DOL. So basically, PBI's documented these requests. We've developed a compliance solution that is specifically focused on normal retirement age and required mandatory distribution. So what you need to know. Well, first off, they don't make it easy. There is no step 1, step 2, step 3. The DOL is making it very clear, though, that plan sponsors need to do more. Our belief is that take advantage of this opportunity to self-correct and at least go through an analysis and get started. Because if you wait for the audit letter to arrive, it's probably too late. The other insights from the DOL is that there's no reason to believe that 401k plans are going to be immune to this. And that's kind of an interesting concept because the 401k balance is that of the participant. However, they still are going to face the penalties if they don't take the distribution before 70 and a half. So I think it's a word to the wise. 401k plans are now around, have been around long enough where people are at that 70 and a half and over age, or perhaps they are even deceased. And if they're deceased, what have you done to go ahead and try and find a beneficiary? So we think you need to be working with counsel, other advisors, and your TPA. You need to review your plan documents and see what they say about the requirements. Is there a retro date to required beginning date that you're going to have to go back and calculate the balances? You really need to be aware of exactly what your plan documents say, and you need to prepare. Don't get caught off guard and not have any answers. You want to have, here's what we're doing. Maybe you haven't even started the process yet, but at least you can have some documentation proving what your process will be in the future. So we've been on this, dealing with this issue for, almost a year. We've been looking at it and developing a new service, a solution designed to specifically address the compliance concerns of term vested participants. We're employing new methodologies sources of data and processes. We've researched all the regulatory guidance that currently exists and combined that with the recent DOL focus request items that we've been seeing. We have proactively contemplated and designed a comprehensive service that will provide our clients with data for a comprehensive audit defense. So after providing data to the DOL, they would repeatedly ask, what else did you do? If that wasn't successful, what did you do? What other sources did you use? The list goes on. So in our belief is that we need to offer an analysis, the opportunity that if somebody is located, that we can provide that proof. If a participant cannot be found, the whole concept of are the benefits forfeited. There's so many reasons that you would want to know. Number one, if somebody is deceased, you don't want to be paying PBGC premiums for them. It certainly would lower your funding responsibilities. And so we think that this analysis is going to really fulfill fiduciary obligations by identifying and locating the participants, reducing some of the administrative expenses, certainly reduce the PBGC premiums, and potentially lower the funding obligations. You need to demonstrate a great degree of care, documentation, and process. And we are proud to introduce the details on our terminated, vested, audit, and remediation service. So this is a service that has multi-phases. In phase one, we're going to determine the mortality status. And what we're saying is give us the entire term vested population file. Let us look at everything, where you're going to have to find somebody at some point to get them into pay status. So are they living? Are they dead? Do you not have a date of birth or an SSN? We can identify all of those holes. We can also go and rehabilitate the data, go into commercial sources and get the SSN if you don't have it, or get an accurate date of birth. And so once the data is cleaned up, we're saying, okay, let's put it into different buckets. You've got the participants that there's no need to do anything. They're 40 years old. They're not going to commence benefits. And those are areas where you're going to be able to look at it and decide how to proceed. And that decision will be based upon, are they living, are they dead, and what age are they? And I think that an important element would be documenting that process. So you get to decide, and then because of this concern with certified mail, we're introducing that into the process. I would argue that it is stupid to send a certified letter to a known bad address. However, with the way, it depends on how the language comes out, if that's what needs to be done, then PBI is going to have that capability to do that for you. Unfortunately, it's expensive. We would want to do it at the end of the process after we've attempted to do locate them through our new service. So phase 5, the comprehensive proof of diligence. We're going to identify the participants and beneficiaries not found. We're going to give you all of that, citing the regs. And this is really going to be the do it once, do it right approach. So there's a decision-making process. You give us the file, we're going to evaluate it, we're going to review all of these. You can see the various age categories. And at that point, this is basically the audit part. And then we're going to give you those results and work with you to decide what the next steps are going to be. We're offering a tiered approach. At the highest level, the easiest thing for a plan sponsor is this entire term vested audit and remediation service. We're going to do it for you. We're going to perform the analysis, deliver the proof of compliance. We're going to have documented policies and procedures and an auditable trail. So that makes it simple. The next level is help me do it. So we perform a variety of retrieval services and outreach to missing participants and deliver a closeout letter. You will still need to have the proof of the efforts taken after that point and how you were able to get someone in pay status. The hardest is going to be if you come to us and say, just give me some addresses, and then you're going to be responsible for performing the mailings. You have to have proof that you performed the mailing, and I don't know if you have the technology there. And you have to track what happened with each mailing. Did it come back as undeliverable? Okay. Did they respond and everything's great? That's wonderful. Or did nothing happen? And if nothing happened, you have to wonder, okay, did they just choose not to respond? Or did someone just throw it in the trash because the person doesn't live there? So you're going to really have to be able to put a lot of policies and procedures in place so that you can track that on your own. So this audit and remediation process. So first thing a client's going to do is send the file to PBI. We're going to do a data scrub. We're going to perform the death audit. And we're going to get a series of addresses from our commercial data sources. Next step is we're going to start a mailing process. So we use first-class mail. And the reason we do it that way is so that it comes back as undeliverable and we are able to take action. And so once the letters are mailed, one of three things is going to happen. They're going to respond, and they can do that via the internet. They can use the business response envelope that we give them, or they can call our call center. And our call center has live people. We explain what's going on. Participants are sometimes very confused, especially when you're talking multi-employer plans. If it says UFCW, they go, I never worked for UFCW, and we go, right, but did you work for Safeway or Albertsons? So our call center is really equipped to answer all the questions and to even go to say that there's no reason a plan would want to potentially find you if they didn't think you might have a benefit. We don't give them any guarantees. In this process, we are also looking for beneficiaries of decedents. So we're asking them if, and our letter specifically states, we're looking for a beneficiary or a surviving spouse. And then what we ask them to respond back to us with is the date of death, their name, their relationship to that person so that we can deliver it to our client. And then it's up to you to decide, is that person eligible? We don't have any claims that if we find them that they're eligible for a benefit, we don't make any of those type of statements. So what's new? What I've talked about is, for the most part, our confirmed address location process. But what we're doing now, we're going to institute outbound phone calls. We're going to have our call center make calls from a script, document the call. We will have all the details of that. And that is basically to satisfy the fact that the DOL did the very same and found people and was shocked that the plan sponsor didn't. So that's one of the new elements. The other is social media. If you can go on the internet and find the LinkedIn profile, and you can see that the person worked for your company and now they're at another company, that's all really easy stuff. And so we're working with clients right now to figure out what action PBI will take. Are we going to just give you a screenshot or the URL? But that is something that the DOL is saying that's simple. And why isn't it being done? And don't tell me the person's, quote, missing if, in fact, they're not. So at this point, we would have completed our process. At that point, you might want to decide, I want certified mail. Maybe the regs will come out and say you have to do it. We're not really sure right now, but I know that some general counsels are saying, nope, we're doing certified mail. So that's going to be an option at the end of the process. And, you know, as I said before, it is expensive and it's an additional fee, but if that's your belief, then we are certainly able to do that for you. Okay, so what are the next steps? I think we all know that audits can produce some serious consequences. They're time-consuming, they're stressful, they can result in a loss of tax qualification, penalties, and fines. It can run up to several $100,000. We've seen some recent things about it being much more in the press, and you know, so it's a big issue, and I think you want to proactively take care of it. You need to understand what the triggers are for a DOL audit, and they vary. It could be a participant complaint, which is kind of what tipped off this activity in Philadelphia. It could be the Form 5500, the fact that somebody has a large number of term vested participants. And it could be this national enforcement priorities and projects, and that appears to be the driver for why this has gone nationwide. They're seeing it as, how can you be a good plan fiduciary and let someone die and never get their benefits? So I think it's clear that that's the direction the DOL is going. So you need to prepare for an audit. Are you following the plan documents? You need to minimize your risk. Respond to participants timely and accurately, and distribute the notices that are required by law. We all know that there's summary annual reports and annual funding statements that need to go out. And if you don't have an address on file, then you obviously never did send those out. So you need to get your housekeeping records in order. You should establish a record-keeping system that documents your process and your proof that you followed it, and retain all those documents for 7 years. We also think the best approach is to self-correct. If you are responding to an audit, you really need to establish a primary contact. Consider legal counsel, clarify the scope of the audit, make copies of all the documents. If you find a discrepancy, document a response and prepare your staff. So you want them to be notified, and you want to dictate who is going to be talking back and forth with the DOL to protect and make sure that, you know, the right things are being communicated. So, best practices. We wanted to highlight this before we go into the Q&A. Have a documented process in place. Many clients take the process that we provide them and incorporate it into their own. So they would say, okay, at age 62, we're going to start a process. And then put the details of what PBI will do, and that has worked very well. You need to determine the triggers for locating participants. Uncashed checks are a nightmare, as most of you are probably well aware. A returned ACH advice, returned mail. You need to look at all of those things and what is going to trigger you to take action. You should at least, at a minimum, perform an age 64 project and certainly avoid 70.5 concerns. You should perform an address cleanup project at least once a year. We have clients that do it semi-annually. They do one that's a very, simple address verification, and that's to support their delivery of the annual funding notice. And then in the fall, they would do the confirmed approach to demonstrate diligence and locate those that need to be in pay status, or you need to locate a beneficiary, or there's, some fiduciary type reason that you need to find them. You need to search for beneficiaries in a timely manner. If someone dies before they're eligible for benefits, it's not going to get easier when they get to retirement age and then you're trying to find the beneficiary. So as part of that audit process, if we go and identify here are term vesteds that are deceased, why not go out and find them at that point? It would be much easier to find them. It's, certainly not going to make it easier down the road, and it's not going to improve with age. And then, you can combine participants from multiple plans to obtain the best pricing. So we do that with a lot of plans, and sometimes they'll use 2 different administrators, one for the 401k, one for the defined benefit. We have the capability to reference both plans and deliver the results where they need to go, so that you're not duplicating any effort. So we do that for a lot of our clients. So we believe you need to develop a systematic approach that includes the following. You need to anticipate the lost participants. You have to develop the process. You got to keep track of participants. We use barcoding, and it simplifies that in some way. I'm not sure. I know some of the large TPAs use barcoding, so at least they know when it came back undeliverable. If you're not doing something like that, you might want to consider implementing it, and we can assist you if needed. You want to proactively communicate to participants why and how not to become lost. Yeah, it's amazing. Every day we find people that have no idea they're entitled to benefits. They call us up, and and companies that have been acquired, and they go, well, the company doesn't exist anymore. Well, their benefits still do. And so we have been instrumental in reuniting well over 3 million people with their benefits, and that's through that confirmed approach. We've located them, we've communicated, we've confirmed an address, we've identified a beneficiary, and they have gotten in pay status. Lastly, you really want to ensure your plan records contain correct information, and we have the capability to assist you with that. We can look at your entire term vested file, evaluate it, tell you where the red flags are, and then we can clean up that data. So at this point, I think we want to open it up for the Q&A. And I'm not sure if Chad has questions already established, but perfect.
Yeah, Sue, that was great. Definitely, I know I learned a lot, and definitely glad that PBI has managed to stay on top of all this, and you're definitely the experts in all things considered. Had 4 questions come in so far, so if anybody else has any questions, please type them in now. I'll just kind of go through them real quick here, Sue. The first one is from Mike. He's asking, included terms such as regular basis and reoccurring basis associated with the search measures. Can you elaborate on the regulatory definition of regular and reoccurring, or a general safe harbor definition interpretation of that frequency? For a very large plan with a relatively large number of missing participants, if an exhaustive search in compliance with the plan's policy is completed without locating specific participant in 1 year, is there a date in that regulatory agency that would state that a policy search process should again commence?
Okay, so that's a confusing one, and once again, it goes back to the fact that the guidance is not there. The DOL is taking guidance from terminating plans and trying to apply it inconsistently. And if you don't have access to the paper from the American Council of Benefits, let us know. We'll get it to you, because they're highlighting all of these reasons, saying, wait a second, you're saying that plans have to do all of this, yet there's no guidance. And as you all know, they don't make it easy. There's not step 1, step 2, step 3. They leave it up for interpretation. And so what does regular mean? What does recurring mean? I think that when we put our term vested population, the fact that we're going to identify the 4 different categories, the living and deceased, and then the age range, I think that that's going to predicate what steps you will take. And As far as recurring, we're seeing that, I delivered the closeout letter, and, say we completed the project in 2016, December 2016. Then they're going to say, well, what have you done since then? And that's relatively new. In the past, the closeout letter says, hey, you performed a diligent search, you tried, you were unfortunately unsuccessful. And keep in mind, we can't make participants respond. Some choose not to. Some don't want the benefits. Some are just not aware that they're entitled to them, or don't think that it's something that they really need to worry about. So the recurring, I'm hoping we will get some more guidance on that. I don't think that there's an obligation to do anything on a recurring basis until they're at least at normal retirement age. And maybe you consider, okay, we're going to locate them at age 62 and then perform another search prior to 70 and a half. So if that's enough for a recurring, we don't know the answers to that right now.
Okay, great.
So,
I'm sorry, Sue. I thought you had completed your thought there.
yeah, for the most part, I think, stay tuned. We hope to get, better information on this, and we will definitely be sharing that through white papers, etc.
Okay. I got a few more here. I actually have had a great response come in that we probably won't be able to tackle all of them in this session, but definitely pass all these questions on to you, Sue, after the words, and I'm sure you could follow up with them. But just to go through a couple quick more while we have a few more minutes. We have a few, this is from a participant, or an individual. We have a few pension plan participants who are missing and last known address in a foreign country. Can you help us track down those type of participants?
Yes, and it is a challenge when they're in a foreign country. We're going to make the assumption that they have a name and an SSN and are American citizens. Through our comprehensive outreach program, we locate participants worldwide. It's pretty impressive. Most people that have, have someone monitor their mail in the U.S., and so they do get forwarded or communicated, and we do, in fact, find them. But it, obviously it's a concern. It's a concern if they're living or dead as well when they're in another country.
I would add to that, we've located people, again, all over the globe. We have a pretty deep state collection, actually. And like Sue said, it's usually sent to, a permanent address, which is usually a family member, a relative who will kind of respond for them or forward it to them overseas. Other times they send it to a letter forwarding service, in the States that will get it to them overseas, and they'll respond that way. It's not ideal, but bottom line, if they have a correct American SSN, we have a good chance of finding them.
And more importantly, we'll provide proof that you attempted. And that is, probably, that's the biggest reason that attorneys send their clients to PBI. They want the proof.
Okay. Another one, if you go through all these steps, even locate the participant, and they still do not complete paperwork to initiate payments, what do you do? Do you initiate payments without their consent, or what is the practice for that?
I don't think you would want to initiate payments without some communication with that plan, with the participant themselves. The guidance is very confusing. Some people say they're going to escheat it to the state. I've not heard that that's really because of ERISA being federal law. Hopefully we'll get guidance on that question. But I think at some point you have to say we've done all that we can, and here's my proof of what efforts were taken, and that's why we've added these additional steps into our process.
Okay, then we'll tackle one more here, and then if you got any final thoughts, that would be great. Last question, how far back are you able to search? We have lost participants who passed away back in the 70s, and we've continually tried to locate surviving family members and have continued to fail?
Yeah, that's a real challenge when they have been deceased for that long. And because basically in commercial credit databases, if there's no activity, somewhere around 10 years or more, they drop out of the databases. So it really would be a matter, do you have beneficiary information that we can use? We have the capabilities to locate relatives. We also, if you're not a client of PDIs, we have a research center, and that provides you with instant access to participant data. You can get their address history going all the way back, and you can do a relative search. In the relative search, it's not going to say this is the spouse and this is the son or daughter, but you can also look at the age range and really come up with what might be applicable. And we can assist our clients in that effort. We also have obituaries that, you know, if they have an obituary, an online one from the 70s is probably not in the cards. But I think that there are steps that we can assist in that manner.
Okay, great. Well, the rest of the questions, Sue, I'll actually pass over to you online, and maybe you and your team can follow up with some of the more specific ones and stuff. But holy cow, been really, the response has been great, and definitely people are very interested in learning more about this. So if you got any final thoughts, that'd be great. And if not, we'll call it a day.
I wanted to add one more final thing. You know, we're paying attention to what the regulations are doing with the DOL, IRS, and even PBGC, and we developed this service to have that certificate of compliance to be completely bulletproof. You know, all avenues have been tracked, and that certificate of compliance is going to list every single one of those IRS, DOL regs, and what we did and how we found them, and it's going to hold water. We got our confirmed service for over 30 years, and we're starting to get some questions on it, and that's why we took the next step to develop this service, again, just to be completely bulletproof, or I like to say audit-proof. Yeah. And we definitely want to get client feedback on this. We're pretty sure we know how we're going to do this, but we're definitely open to any recommendations or suggestions that you guys may have to make the service even better.
I agree completely. And, you know, one thing, we employed the IRS letter forwarding service for over 24 years. And while it was a painful process, it did yield results. So like the case of the person that died in the 70s, that SSN is still tied in IRS records. And so we were successful in locating them. Unfortunately, that's not a tool that we can use anymore. So. But thank you for all of your interest. It appears this is a good topic, and we are going to be putting a white paper together and some other information to share with you, and we welcome the opportunity to certainly talk with you and answer any questions you may have. So,
awesome.
Thank you, Chad.
Awesome, Sue. Again, great job, and thanks for all the great information. And upon myself and others, we'll definitely keep everybody informed of when that information is ready, and keep everyone informed of how they can get that. So I guess with that, we'll close things out. And I want to thank everybody for taking time again for attending today's webinar provided by PBI, and special thank you to Sue as well. Hope everybody has a great afternoon, and thank you for attending.
All right. Thank you.